Good morning and welcome to Market Outsiders. My name is Naman. I'm joined by my colleague Jenny Ray. We're part of the Management Consultant Leadership Team. And if you've been listening for a while, you know that every couple of days we're back here breaking down one of the week's biggest news stories through a business focused lens. Our job and our goal is to give you insights you won't get anywhere else. So buckle up for the next 15 or 20 minutes. We're talking about a business that I think some of you may have never heard of before. Before we get there, Jenny Ray, do you want to say hey to the folks?
Hi, y'all. I'm Jenny Ray LaRue, and we find business news wherever we can. When somebody asked me right after I was at Bain how I got smart on business, I said the back of airline pockets in the airline magazines, right? I would like read them with rapt attention because I always thought if somebody was profiled or advertising in an airline magazine, it was worth understanding why. And that was kind of where the start for me of Market Outsiders was. So today, I'm really excited about this conversation because often we take the news so that you can be smarter about what's happening in the news with earnings, public companies that you can do more research on. And today, we had to actually go to do some primary research. So, Naman, if you want to tee up who we're talking about and your own personal story, I'll also weigh in on how I kind of came to this, to an understanding of this business and why I thought it would be interesting to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, today we're talking about Jolie. And if you haven't heard of Jolie before, no, we're not talking about the old Dolly Parton song or the Ray LaMontagne cover. We're talking about a direct-to-consumer showerhead brand. And so Jolie's claim to fame is that they stuck a filter inside of a showerhead. And so they've been around for about 6 or 7 years and have piggybacked off of like the health and wellness craze that we've been seeing take place across the US and across the economy. And their whole thesis is that if you can remove some of the minerals, chemicals, toxins, what have you, right, that may be in your water supply, that it'll be better for your hair and skin. And they claim to be really the only shower head on the market that's able to do that. And so I think that innovation can be found in the most unlikeliest of places. So all they did was combine two innovations: showerhead innovation, water filter innovation. What happens if we put them together? We have a new business, right? And we have like a new way to sell showerheads at a premium price. And so one of the things that drew us to the company isn't just the fact that they put a filter in a showerhead, it's the way that they've decided to go to market. And so when you are introduced to the brand, you're probably introduced to the brand through social media. You probably see them on Instagram, you see them on TikTok, you might even see them on LinkedIn. They're really good at kind of targeting their core consumer segments through social media. They are a true direct-to-consumer brand. Like you purchase Jolie through their website. They are now available on Amazon, and I believe that they're starting to now establish some retail relationships. But the way that they got established, the way that they gained a foothold in the market was by going direct to consumer. How we've talked about these challenger brands in food, they followed a very similar playbook to start to kind of carve out a niche for themselves. So I am a user of Jolie. I
As of
don't
how long, Naman?
like, gosh, like a week. So
And what did you buy it for? Come on, we already celebrated this on the pod, but Jolie wasn't there then. Why'd
Jolie
you buy
wasn't
Jolie?
there. Yeah. So um, it was a wedding anniversary gift. So if you go and look at these shower heads, you're like, okay, this is like 5 or 6 times more than I've ever spent on a shower head before. So like for me, I had to like, it had to be for an occasion, you know? And,
This
you
wasn't
know,
just an everyday football Saturday kind of
wasn't just an
showerhead purchase.
everyday, like I saw a commercial and decided to order a pizza, you know, like I had to put a little bit more thought into it. And you know, if you know my wife, she's very content and she's very happy. So I'm like, okay, that's great, but it means you're very difficult to buy gifts for. And so so I was like, okay, I think that this is something that she would appreciate, that she would like, but she wouldn't necessarily buy for herself. And so we both get to benefit because you know we both get to use the shower head. And so early returns are positive. You know, even putting aside like all the filtered stuff, just the shower head itself is like really nice. And so like I'm happy just with like the flow, the water pressure, like the feel of the thing, the look, the aesthetic. So I'm like, okay, all the water filter stuff, all like the, hey, it's better for your hair and skin. I don't necessarily know if that's true. I'm not sure yet if I've used it enough to be able to feel a difference, but I'm happy with everything else. So all of that just seems like the cherry on top.
Naman, before you talk a little bit more about, yeah, we kind of had a conversation yesterday about how they kind of had innovated in one specific way in terms of the subscription model versus the initial payment model. I want to come back to that, so I'll put a pin in that real quick. But I just want to share why I decided that I wanted Jolie to come on the podcast, and I hope I've been some part of your showerhead success. But for us, we're always looking for kind of interesting stories, and we'll look for them wherever we can find them. But for me, one day on LinkedIn, I was on responding to a number of messages, and I actually saw this profiled as a story, and I thought it was compelling. And Jolie, as far as I remember, Naman is a private company, and it was talking about how they just went like razor sharp on a super simple funnel. And the funnel was like, let me tell you how terrible your water is, and then I'll offer you something to solve it. I just, it's kind of one of those things that seems incredibly obvious when you look at it now. Like beds were modified to come in a box mailed to your house. Like mattress innovation came before this, which is startling to me because the box size for Jolie is so much smaller. The frequency of use is similar. Like a lot of the kind of purple mattress focus, Casper, of those like really innovative businesses was to disrupt brands that had a complete lock on a retail channel. They had it because they were sold in furniture stores, and they were sold in, just like direct mattress or bed only stores. But there were places where people would go, and they were the only places. And there was not thought to be a direct to consumer angle for those kinds of businesses. They were super high margin businesses. Really close to where I used to live in Georgia, there was the former mattress facility that now had been bought by Fiserv, which is a financial services company. And I mean, it was like you could stay on the property. It was a retreat center on the Chattahoochee River. And you look around at these places, and it was like, oh my goodness, like this business had to be printing money in order to afford a facility like this in the time that they were generating this kind of capital. And I think of mattress disruption in the same way of this disruption of this business. So I just immediately saw those parallels between the two of them, taking a channel that everyone assumed was locked down, and completely going around it. And so I thought that was super interesting. I had never heard of the brand. I am not a consumer of Jolie. But I thought that just the way that they had developed their super simple funnel with, as far as I can tell, I don't know if there are 20 Jolie products now, but at least for the first few years as they scaled, I think it was like 1 million in the first year, 4 million in the second year, they only had a single product. It was just like, if your water is bad, buy Jolie, we will ship it to you. It wasn't, there was not, there weren't 60 model numbers. There wasn't the Rolls Royce and the Tesla of the water of the what is it called? Showerhead. So yeah, anyhow, I thought that there were some really, really interesting disruptions around marketing, but more specifically around channel. And we're currently almost done. On Wednesday, our Airbnb at the winery will go live. And so this last 2 weeks has been, back at the hardware store 6 times, picking out knobs and identifying fixtures and figuring out that one pillow that we forgot to get. It's just going to put the cherry on top. And we have some really cool, winery themed things. But literally, like, that decision about the shower head wasn't made by myself and the designer. The people who are going to, we're doing everything else inside the house. It was made by the builders. We weren't consulted on it. When they bought it at the hardware store. And it is just super, super fascinating to me. That's not true necessarily if you're doing like a bathroom only renovation. But I just thought, up until the breaking of this story on my radar, which was 2-ish weeks ago, I literally had never thought about going around that process. And this is not my first remodel that I'm doing. This is not my first Airbnb that I'm operating. And so I just keep thinking about all of the disruptive pieces of the process. It's not, and I think a lot of people, Naman, by the way, when they're thinking about a business, they look at product as the the primary form of disruption. I know you're gonna talk about that, but I think this one was so many more things. It was marketing, it was channel, it was business disruption, it was messaging. And so I get really excited when I see those kinds of examples because I think there are a lot of stories inside there for how we operate our own businesses.
So I want to double click on one thing that you said that I wanted to get to, and it was the piece around the simplified funnel. So, you know that we do a lot of executive communication and storytelling training with teams at the Fortune 500. And one of the things that I
So
often
much
find,
training.
that's why I've been on a plane for 30 of the last 45 days. And so, one of the things that I often find with those teams is that they are very good at talking about like why what they're doing matters, but they're not so great at framing the problem first. And so they are trying to sell a solution
I think
to
you're being so delicate. They can't
in
tell
front of
you in less than 30 minutes what the heck it is they do or why somebody should care. I mean, that's why they bring us in is because nobody actually understands what in the world these businesses are gonna do for them, and they're shocked that they can't sell what they're doing.
and one of their problems is that they cannot frame up the problem for the client or for their internal leadership. And so if you cannot convince your audience that they have a problem, then it doesn't matter how great your solution is. And so one of the things that Jolie has done really well is they haven't sold the product as much as they've sold, hey, your water sucks. Right. And so if you kind of go and look at the funnel, if you go look at the initial offer, it's not like, hey, we'll give you a discount on a shower head. It's not like, hey, like join a
In
loyalty
fact, it's
program.
the opposite. It's like, we
It's
will
the
charge you
opposite.
out the wazoo. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. The kind of initial hook is like, we'll give you a free water test. And then you can decide for yourself if that's, if that's the water you want to shower in. Right. And so, um, that wasn't my motivation for buying, but I can see how that would be powerful, especially for people who, maybe have sensitive skin or have had issues with hair falling out, right? Like you would be willing to try almost anything in those situations, right? To like improve, uh, you know, improve your health. And so, I think that's the one of the first things I noticed, and I wanted to double click on that, right? Is they're very good at convincing people they have a problem, and then once you convince people that they have a problem, they will listen to you about your potential solution. And so I saw a lot of parallels between what we're doing for executive teams in the Fortune 500 and what this kind of direct to consumer challenger brand is doing. That was number one, and then number two was the way that they maintain customer relationships over time, the way they maintain stickiness. And so, you buy the initial shower head, but there's a subscription element to the business, which is that they
that's the
recommend.
magic.
That's the
Ooh,
magic right
okay.
there. And that's where the valuation is going to skyrocket, right? Initially in the private markets, and then who knows, maybe one day, in
If
a
they
different.
even need it. I mean, why do you need capital to scale if you could have made 100 or 1,000 of these, and the guy that founded it, by the way, is not this isn't his first rodeo or his first
Mhm.
venture, and it's super different than the last one, which I also really loved because I thought that is the hallmark of a serial entrepreneur. Isn't like I have a friend who's been super, super successful in the payments industry. He shouldn't go outside the payments industry. It's incredibly complicated. He's on his third startup. He's had incredible exits from the last two. He'll sell this business for more than he sold any of the other ones for, and that's exactly why people do this with him. But when people can pivot and take those lessons, to a different place, that's kind of why the PayPal mafia find it fascinates me, right? Because they've gone way beyond payments into totally different other sectors, but they've identified parallels of that industry and everything else
Which
they've
is one
done.
of the
Sorry.
reasons we have this podcast, right?
Yeah,
Is for us to be
connected.
able to do the same and to help other people connect
Mhm.
the dots as well. Here, very quickly, here's the subscription element of the business. It's that every 3 months you get a new filter for the shower head. So kind of having that kind of setup where someone can like auto subscribe and get a new filter sent to them every 3 months. I believe it's $35 every quarter. Now all of a sudden you're not just charging a premium for the product initially, but you're extracting additional value from your customer over time, and they are actually paying you to maintain that product, like like at peak performance. So like if not only do you get the incremental revenue, but if for whatever reason someone notices that like their water flow isn't as strong as it used to be, or that the effects that maybe the shower head's having on their skin aren't as good as they used to be, have you changed your filter? Right? It's like it's shifting the burden of responsibility away from the manufacturer back to the customer. which like beyond the incremental revenue is just one of the other like unlocks I think of this kind of model.
Mm, I love that. No, on it, what options do you have? Like, is this coming, beyond the grave, or is this like something that is happening? Kind of, can you switch it like an Amazon subscription where you're like, oh, I just need it every 4 months? Is it like a refrigerator filter, which you may never actually change because you're not sure that it really does anything for filtering? Is there some kind of social proof? You know what I mean? Like we have a like mega filter on our regular sink, but our refrigerator filter, I've always just been suspicious about the difference of quality in the filtered water versus the non-filtered water. And so when it tells us to replace it, like we're kind of like, oh, maybe later,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
I haven't owned it long enough to know for myself. So I will tell you as a customer, you have really two options. Either you subscribe and you just get one every quarterly in your auto build, or you just don't subscribe. And then you can just buy your filters one off. One of the ways that they try to get you into the subscription scheme is they give you a little bit of a discount on the showerhead if you'll like subscribe like at the time of purchase. Right? And so they're obviously counting on the fact that they'll make it back up later and then some. I think the savviest consumers out of us will go ahead and like subscribe initially, and then as soon as you get the shower head, you'll cancel. And so you could have your cake and eat it
Speaking
too.
for some of us,
For
right?
some of us,
Yeah.
yes. And so, but I think the proof would be like, you know, I think the biggest proof would be that your water flow slows. Because like my assumption is that like if you have a clogged filter, like that's gonna affect the experience of the shower head. And so that's gonna be all the proof that you need that, oh, like I need to go ahead and change something here.
And actually, like a clogged filter in their case is a proof point of
And
their
it's working.
of their value proposition, right?
Yes.
That's I think why I've always been suspicious of the other water, and maybe they've just done too good of a job of making a filter. But it's kinda like, man, like, yeah, you imagine that, and that actually makes sense too, and I'm thinking back to Brita filters, which were kind of interesting, like, innovations, in that, like, refrigerator filter space. You would notice that it would slow down as there was more stuff that had been filtered out, and
Mhm.
that was kind of a proof point that it was actually working to
It
have a
was
Brita
working.
filter in your
Yeah.
fridge.
Yeah. But again, not to belabor the point because we've talked about this on previous episodes, but like this is just part of a wave of companies that is piggybacking on I think what we saw Dollar Shave Club really pioneer, which is direct to consumer for uh products that had never been direct to consumer before, right? Like the rise of social media really fueled the ability to go acquire customers on your own without needing to have those retailer relationships like at a Home Depot or a Walmart or a Lowe's. And so you saw it with razors. We've seen it with snacks. We've seen it now with shower heads. We've seen it with mattresses. And so it feels like innovation because it hasn't happened in that space before. But when you zoom out a little bit, you're like, oh, great. Like this has been happening across different sectors for over a decade now. And so the lesson for me is that like what's old hat in one industry can often be innovation in another if you just know how to connect the dots.
Naman, how did they tell about your water? What was the water test? Is that publicly available information that they're scraping and delivering to you? Or are they actually,
Honestly,
like,
I never did it.
asking for a sample of your water? You never did it.
I never did it. I just bought it because I needed a gift and it looked nice and like there's enough social proof out there that I was like, okay, like this will be an upgrade for us, even if the filtering is complete BS, right? So like I think I am an edge case in terms of like why I bought the shower head.
I don't
I do
know. Maybe that's perfect segmentation, yeah.
maybe
I'm just
maybe
curious if there is a cost to them, how tailored it is, if it's kind of like in the Austin area,
yeah.
your water has X, Y, and Z in it. I'm guessing that a lot of that information is actually
Well,
public and it
okay,
wouldn't
well,
be
my guess is
expensive to deliver,
my guess
but
is
yeah.
that you put your zip code in and then they probably ask you for your email to get the results. And all they're doing is aggregating like data that's available from disparate public sources and compiling it into a report and saying, "Hey, here's your water score." Like if I was them, I would have come up with some kind of score and say, "Hey, you're a 67 out of 100." And like the green range is 85 to 100, right? And if you just come up with some kind of scoring like that, I think it makes it really easy for people to just to contextualize, hey, like where my water is on a spectrum. I do know that where I live, my water is incredibly hard. And so, you know, again, most people probably don't know the water quality in their area just for other reasons I already kind of knew. And so I didn't necessarily need the test.
But what I think that is super interesting about that, like you mentioned, as a part of the funnel from a user acquisition standpoint, is that what they're doing is that they're not just identifying the problem, but they are also specifically personalizing the problem. And we're seeing that across a lot of the industries that we're in. In fact, Naman, I would say that's one of the reasons that our corporate training has been so effective is that we don't offer off the shelf corporate training. Like your training will not be anywhere close to the same as the corporate training. The corporate training that you do this Friday and next Wednesday are going to be two totally different corporate trainings,
Completely
because we're
different.
actually going to take the time to understand your business and to figure out what your pain points are. And that kind of personalized selling to consumers at scale is an incredibly like microcosmic way of looking at the entire consulting industry. And when a lot of people talk about the consulting going away, I think they assume that what consultants have been selling for the last 2 decades is commoditized information, which it never ever was, right? It has always been hyper specified with a deep understanding of somebody's specific business problem, and perhaps extrapolated from learnings that you can have at other places. But that personalization at scale is effectively a part of this pre-sales technique that you're seeing that we've known for decades inside the space. And the most effective sellers are able to do exactly that. It's personalization at scale. And I think if you haven't already thought about how you can specifically deploy that in your own business, you're missing the biggest trend more than anything we've ever talked about here. And that's like when we talk about AI, it's not actually like removing redundant efficiencies, it's personalization at scale,
It is.
right? It's being able to specifically talk to somebody specifically where they are, whether it's through agentic AI or informational capture or like specific prompting. And that's why everybody doesn't get the same thing. And it's incredibly, incredibly powerful.
That is the mega trend, and it's becoming the consumer expectation. No matter what price point they enter in at, no matter what market they're in, right? Like the expectation now is, hey, if I'm a Fortune 500 company looking for training, I need it tailored to me. Hey, if I'm a consumer who's making $75,000 a year and I want a shower head, I want it personalized to like my own like water quality. Like that's just the expectation across the board now.
And the more that you can figure out how to do that in leveraged, hyper specific ways, like what I love about Jolie is that you can see the elegance of execution and how they thought about it by being both hyper specific and also through a simplistic process. It's actually more complicated to be simple than it is to be complicated, right? They could have overcomplicated this process in about 50 other ways. They chose not to. And that's why I thought that your use case was really interesting. So if you're listening and you have never bought a Jolie shower head, I'd love for you to go through the process and then send us either a video or a DM that tells us like what you experienced and what you noticed, parallels to other industries that you identified. If you're already a customer, tell us why. How'd they get you? Where did they find you? Kind of where did they figure that out? If you don't have one and you would consider it or you wouldn't, either way, I think it's really interesting to hear from you as well. But that kind of market research is what leads to hyper personalization at scale. And that's really the biggest opportunity of commerce today.
As we wrap up, I just want to say, I think one of the reasons that our corporate training is so successful and so popular, one of the reasons that you see some consultants kind of rise to the top of their profession while others don't, like I think the common thread between success and failure in today's business world is, can you become a professional simplifier? Can you focus either your own business or your clients on what's most important, and then like remain laser focused on those things in the midst of distraction? And so I tell our clients all the time, like the reason that you work with us is because we are professional simplifiers and we'll help you focus on what you need to be focused on when you need to be focused on it. And so that to me is one of the big picture takeaways from just examining Jolie's business. Jenny Ray, thanks so much for this conversation. I enjoyed it. Thanks so much for kind of thinking about Jolie in the context of this podcast. That I don't think I ever thought we'd be talking about a shower head on Market Outsiders. So, but this is not just a surprise for our audience; it's
Guilty.
a surprise
Guilty
for
is
me as well.
charged. Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you enjoyed today's conversation, then please do us a favor: subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. Market Outsiders is on YouTube as well. Just go ahead and search for it on YouTube. Subscribe. Leave a review on your podcast app of choice, Apple Podcasts and Spotify, wherever you listen. It really helps us out. Share this episode if you found it interesting. You can find the share button right under the episode wherever you're listening. And then, like Jenny Ray mentioned, reach out with feedback, suggestions on future topics you'd like us to cover, our email address is in the show description. Thanks so much for listening today. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time on Market Outsiders.